Thank you for tuning in to the Into the Classroom series produced by Mental Health California, sponsored by Blue Shield of California's Blue Sky Initiative.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the pod at 7. My name is Tex Wambui, and I'll be your host tonight. I want to start by thanking Mental Health California and Blue Shield of California's Blue Sky Initiative for supporting this space and helping make conversations like this possible. I also want to thank our peer leaders, clinicians, youth mentors, producers, and each one of you for showing up tonight. Before we get started, a few quick reminders. This is a safe and respectful space. There's no stigma here, and every experience does matter. So please keep the chat supportive and respectful. You'll also see some polls, some trivia, and a short survey throughout the session. So keep an eye out in the chat. And there will also be a sign-in form that will be shared at the very end of the webinar and will close at 8:30 p.m. sharp. You might hear me say that again. So please don't miss that. You'll also see a trigger warning in the chat during the session. It's there to support your well-being, and participation is always optional. So tonight, we are talking about understanding trauma in high school students and college students and how support, safety, and healing can happen in real life. So I'm really glad you're all here with us. And to help us set the stage, I'm going to pass it on to Alexios for a quick overview of tonight's focus.
Thank you so much, Tex. And how's it going, everyone? Alexios here, peer leader with Brother Be Well and Mental Health California. The pod at 7. Thank you guys for being here once again. If you're new, welcome. Today we're gonna have a lot of conversations opening up. Some of the things may be a little touchy related to mental health, substance use, trauma, or lived experiences that can bring up strong or unexpected feelings. Everyone's experiences are different, and sometimes certain topics make us feel uncomfortable. But support is available. We're all here for you. Please reach out in any case scenarios, or take a second, take a step back, and just reach out if you need and take time to yourself. Go at your own pace, but we're all here for you. And just to jump straight into it, you guys know school can feel like juggling hundreds of things: grades, friendships, planning in the future. Add the trauma to the mix, and it's just shifts from juggling and survival. Tonight, we're going to talk about what trauma looks like for students and how to create safety and support so learning and healing can happen concurrently. And I'm going to pass it over to our youth mentor, none other than Coach Cramp.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Thank y'all for joining us. It's Coach Crump back again. Just want to say, when it comes to recognizing trauma in high school and in college students, it's not something that's left outside the classroom. It often follows students into the classroom, into their dorms, into the hallways, wherever. It can come from a number of different places, whether it be family conflict or violence or whatever the case may be. But trauma can really change how your brain handles stress. We want to have this conversation because we know that we'll have our clinicians here and they're going to talk to us more about how, that can affect our nervous system, keep us on high alert, or, just make it harder to sleep or concentrate or eat. All those different things, and when these things happen, it actually really impacts us on a deeper level underneath where a lot of these things that we're dealing with aren't really visible. So the struggles that we're dealing with, they're not visible, but they're impacting us on the inside. So we're going to talk about these things tonight, and together we'll explore what it looks like to move from survival towards a stability in your life and on your campus. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and pass it on over to Andre to take us to the next segment of our conversation.
Yeah, thank you for that, Coach Crump. This is Andre, peer leader here with Mental Health California, and today we're going to start off by getting into our icebreaker. As Tech said, this is a safe space, and this is a really heavy topic today. So I want you guys to, feel safe and jump straight into it with this icebreaker. Today's icebreaker is going to be if you could write a note about trauma to your younger self, what would the first line be? And, this is something that, I've routed my brain around a lot. And for me, it would be you are enough. So I want to, give you guys the opportunity to, kind of let yourself heal and, tune in with yourself and just really see if you guys could write a note about trauma to your younger self. What would your first line be? As I mentioned, for me, it would be you are enough. It doesn't have to be super long. It could just be, a couple words. It's just that first line. So you guys go ahead and jump in the chat. Eric Gonzalez, you said it does get better. That's perfect. That's amazing right there. Um, and that's the story of life. It gets better. There's always, that end of the rainbow that we're always looking at, and it's always there. Lily, you said you deserve peace. Yeah, that's super powerful. Ariana, you said don't let it define or control your life. It passes. Every storm passes. You just kind of got to get through it. Uh, Nor you deserve love. Yeah, I'm loving these responses, you guys. These are amazing. Everything will work out. Andrea Martinez, Gray Hernandez, it's okay to feel any emotion, no matter what it is. Yeah, you guys are amazing in the chat today. You guys have blown this icebreaker away. Good job. Keep this same mentality when it comes to the rest of today's session because, like I said, it's super heavy and this is a safe space. So we really want you guys to, tap in to your emotional side and, just learn a lot from today's session. And with that being said, we're going to jump into our topic media. Do your best.
Happy Sunday, everyone. This is Justin Martinez, the Motivational Minute. I've been noticing as my week progresses, I feel like I'm doing a lot, but I'm not always feeling like I'm getting a lot done. So I try to stay strong in those moments and do what I can. Like today, I dropped my girlfriend off at the train so she could leave out of town, and I remembered I didn't get my workout in, but I seen a bench and I started doing push-ups and dips on the bench. 3 sets, as many as I could do. And now I feel like I've done what I can with what I can and while I can. So just want to give you guys a reminder that doing what you can is enough and doing your best is enough. Don't ever forget that. Happy Sunday. Stay strong.
All right, guys. We do love Justin Martinez and his wisdom, infinite wisdom. Doing your best is enough. One of the main reasons why we have to keep reminding ourselves that doing your best every day is sometimes all you can have, right? People often say give it 100%. But what if you don't have 100% that day, right? You don't have 100% to give. If you have 70% and you still give all of your 70%, you in fact give your all 100. That's all you have. We want to know how you doing your best and how does trauma affect your day to day. So in the chat now, we're going to drop a poll for you. And the prompt for the poll today, for the first poll is, how does trauma tend to show up from your day to day? Because that will affect how you show up and how you do your best. Let's see what you guys answer. Yeah, trust, Mm-hmm. Yeah. Overwork, overthink, try to stay busy. Absolutely. Um, when you get busy, you just forget that things are happening, right? Because if you're so busy, you just kind of shift your focus elsewhere and pretend that what is bothering you or the trauma just doesn't matter because it's not in your mind. Like you have other things you worry about, or they used to say like have bigger fish to fry, I guess. And the most popular one is overthink, overwork. Okay. Equally would be you don't trust. Okay. So it's shifting a little bit. Get overwhelmed or shut down emotionally. Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of that going around, especially during the pandemic. I think people just shut down because they wall in their house. And it's easy just to not deal with these things. Dr. Rinty, what have you think of the response so far? Were you surprised by any of the popular response? There's like three of them. That's kind of number 10 and 9 are together. Easily overwhelmed and overwork, overthink. What do you think of these answer and what have you been your experience?
I think, you know, what they're describing the answers, overwhelmed, overthink, they're describing what actually happens when someone has lived through trauma and their body is just has been going through chronic stress, constant stress. So, and when that stress is so constant, there's an alarm center in our brain that goes red alert, and it's always sensitized. And anytime we're in situation that aren't probably dangerous, the brain feels like it's dangerous. The brain feels like, okay, maybe I'm not safe here. So then, getting overwhelmed much faster than other people occurs. So, for those people who said this, I want you to place your hand on your chest and just tell yourself, what can you feel? Can you feel your heartbeat? Um, can you feel that your shoulders are tense? Just tap on your heart and tap, and you'll feel your shoulders relax, your body relax, and it's gonna help calm down some of that pressure.
Thank you, Dr. Rimty. It's easy though to think about these answer and how they are popular among you guys, right? There's just so much going on your plate, whether you go to school or having relationship, friendship, the things that you have to deal with, and throw trauma on top of that. It can really affect how you perform and show up on a daily basis. I think all of these answers are really good. But there's a couple of you guys who responded that you numb yourself with substance and distraction to avoid difficult feelings. The whole point of the series is to guide you guys away from that, where you can build more healthy habits and use those healthy habits to kind of offset those feelings and deal with your trauma in a more productive way. Dr. Rimty, do you have any suggestion for healthy habit that our youth can try at home?
Yeah, definitely. So I've also seen that some of people said, they are constantly working, they're constantly busy. Just so you don't have to think about the event because slowing down, doesn't feel safe. So I think if you could just schedule maybe 5 minutes of pause today. You don't do anything. You don't check on your phone. You don't look around anywhere. You just sit there. You just take long, deep breaths and long, deep exhales and just teach your body through that silence, through just pausing, that rest can be safe. Rest can help you. That's it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And with that, we go into pass it on to Tex.
Thank you so much, Patrick and Dr. Rimty. All right, we're going to take a quick pause and lighten kind of the room up just a bit with our first trivia question. And before it drops, a few reminders. Please wait until the question appears in the chat before answering, and post your response in the meeting group chat, not in private messages. So you only get one guess, and the first correct answer wins the $25 gift card. All right, here we go. And the question is, who was the first Black woman to travel into space? Great way to start off Black History Month. Like that one. Awesome. We got responses coming in. I like that. I like that. Keep them coming. And Wish I could answer, but I cannot because I don't know the answer, actually. Shame on me. But keep the responses coming. Keep the responses coming. And shortly we will be having a winner, and we will know the winner in the chat soon. And as we wait for the winner, I would like to. Oh, there's our winner. Congrats, Amina Parker. For the right answer is May Jemison. Thank you for that. And congrats on you for winning the $25 gift card and for teaching me something new as well. Now let's kind of shift back into tonight's conversation. And we'll be having Alexios lead us in the next section.
Yep. Thanks, Tex, and congrats again. You guys stay tuned. We're going to have another trivia a little farther down the line. But for the meantime, to a video presentation called Why You Can't Just Get Over Trauma and the Science Behind Healing.
Have you ever been told to just move on or get over it after experiencing something traumatic? If you have, you know that it's not that simple. Trauma isn't just a bad memory that we can choose to forget or a wound that heals naturally over time. It's much more complex than that, affecting both the mind and the body in profound ways. I'm Dr. Tracy Marks, a psychiatrist, and I make mental health education videos. Today, I want to talk about why trauma isn't just something you can just get over and why understanding the science behind it is essential for healing. When we talk about trauma, we're not just talking about the event itself, but the lingering impact that it has on your brain and body. To understand why trauma is so hard to get over, we first need to look at what happens in the brain and body when we experience something traumatic. Trauma is a complex psychological and physiological response to experiences that overwhelm a person's capacity to cope. It's often associated with a single life-threatening event like accidents or assaults, but trauma can also result from prolonged exposure to chronic stressors, such as abuse, neglect, or systemic oppression. Psychologically, trauma occurs when an event or a series of events profoundly impacts a person's sense of safety, identity, and worldview. It's important to note that trauma is subjective. What's traumatic for one person may not be for another, depending on factors like personal history, support systems, and neurobiological resilience. I talk more about how to build up your resilience in another video that I'll have linked in this video. When you experience trauma, several key areas of your brain are impacted. The amygdala, often referred to as the brain's fear center, becomes hyperactive. This heightened state of alertness is why trauma survivors often feel anxious or on edge even when there's no immediate danger. The amygdala remains in a constant state of vigilance, scanning for potential threats and making it hard to relax or feel safe. Your hippocampus, which is central to forming and retrieving memories, can actually shrink in response to trauma. And this structural change affects how memories are stored and recalled, which is why people with trauma often experience fragmented, distorted, or intrusive memories of the event. And traumatic memories don't get processed the same way that other memories do. Instead, they get stuck and resurface as vivid flashbacks or nightmares. Then there's the prefrontal cortex, which is normally responsible for rational thinking, decision-making, and impulse control. Trauma survivors have reduced activity in the prefrontal cortex, making it difficult to regulate emotions, concentrate, or make decisions, especially in stressful situations. Trauma doesn't just affect the mind, it affects the body as well. When we experience trauma, our body's natural response is to activate our fight, flight, or freeze mode, which is a natural survival mechanism. And this response results in the release of stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. These hormones prepare us to either confront the threat, escape from it, or become immobilized if we have no other options. But if you've experienced trauma, this stress response can become chronically activated, even when the immediate threat has passed. And this is where trauma becomes stored, if you will, in your body. This persistent release of stress hormones can lead to a range of physical symptoms, including muscle tension, chronic pain, digestive issues, and fatigue. Trauma survivors often report they feel perpetually exhausted, on edge, or trapped in an endless cycle of stress. Trauma changes your brain and body in ways that are hard to reverse without targeted interventions. But the concept of neuroplasticity offers hope. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to form new neural connections. By the way, when I was in residency in the late 1990s, we still believed that the brain was largely fixed and unchangeable. How depressing is that? It's only been in the last 25 years that the concept of neuroplasticity has been fleshed out with advances in neuroimaging, and now it's fundamental to our understanding of how the brain works. So the ability to change the brain can go both ways. Trauma can create maladaptive pathways and shrink brain regions, but there are several treatment approaches that can allow for healing the brain from trauma through adaptive rewiring. Let's look at some evidence-based therapies for trauma. One such therapy is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, or EMDR. EMDR is a therapy that involves processing traumatic memories by stimulating both sides of your brain, usually through guided eye movements. This process helps to rewire the brain's response to traumatic memories by reducing their emotional intensity. It allows the brain to reintegrate the memories without the same emotional overwhelm. Another highly effective method is trauma-focused cognitive behavior therapy. This CBT works by helping you identify and change unhelpful thought patterns and behaviors associated with your trauma. Trauma-focused CBT includes exposure therapy, where you gradually face the trauma memories or situations in a controlled and safe manner. This gradual exposure desensitizes you to the experiences that trigger anxiety, and your anxiety reduces over time. Somatic therapies are also gaining recognition in trauma treatment. Unlike therapies that mainly focus on thoughts and emotions, somatic therapies focus on the body. Techniques like somatic experiencing and sensory motor psychotherapy work on the premise that trauma is stored not just in the mind, but in your body's nervous system. And these therapies involve tuning into physical sensations in the body to release stored tension and calm the body's stress response. These therapies help restore a sense of safety and physical self-awareness, allowing trauma survivors to reconnect with their bodies in a healthier, more integrated way. This outcome is called embodiment and is an important aspect of trauma recovery, because being able to tune into and understand your bodily sensations helps with recognizing and managing emotional responses to stress. I know that's a lot. Let me say that again. In order to manage your emotional and physical stress response, you need to get good at being able to tune in to your body's sensations and reactions. Mind-body practices like mindfulness, yoga, and breath work also help cultivate a sense of embodiment. Mindfulness involves staying present with your experiences without judgment. For trauma survivors, mindfulness helps reduce anxiety and improve emotional regulation by training the brain to remain anchored in the present rather than getting swept away with traumatic memories or worries. Yoga has also been shown to help release tension stored in the body and promote relaxation. Specifically, trauma-informed yoga focuses on creating a safe space for participants, allowing them to reconnect with their bodies and regain a sense of control. Similarly, breathwork techniques like deep breathing or diaphragmatic breathing can help calm the autonomic nervous system, reducing the body's fight or flight response and promoting a state of rest and healing. Another important aspect of trauma recovery is practicing self-compassion. Healing from trauma is rarely a linear process. There will be good days and bad days, and you have to treat yourself with kindness rather than judgment. Self-compassion involves recognizing that suffering is a part of the human experience and that you have to treat yourself with the same care that you would offer a loved one. Research shows that self-compassion can reduce the negative effects of trauma by promoting emotional resilience and reducing feelings of shame or self-blame. Simple practices like journaling, spending time in nature, or engaging in creative outlets can be forms of self-care and support healing. Journaling, for example, can provide an outlet to process and release difficult emotions. Nature walks can promote relaxation and provide a grounding experience, helping to soothe the nervous system. By combining evidence-based therapies with mind-body practices and self-compassion, trauma survivors can have multiple options for healing. Trauma is a complex experience that requires equally complex strategies to heal. But the good news is that with the right support and interventions, it's possible to rewire your brain and body toward resilience and recovery.
Well, that was a great video talking about trauma and recovery, and also some helpful tips too. So hopefully everyone got something out of that. My name's Christian Jacobs, clinical advisor. Brother, be well. And our next part of our evening is going to be focused on a question. It's going to be in the chat. So if you take a look at the chat, you'll see the question really poses a good one. Trauma doesn't just affect our past; it also affects our self-worth, our confidence, the way we view relationships and safety. So the question to everyone, think about it. We can probably have a time for a couple people to come off mic. Is how has trauma affected the way you see yourself? So just kind of think about that, and I'll give you a few ideas too as you're thinking, just in terms of how you think it may affect yourself. It's not about just what happened, but it's also about how it makes you feel currently in the time. So one thing could be trauma can partly change self worth. It can affect your confidence. It can affect how you see yourself. It can affect how you see your body, body image, things of that sort. It can change how you interact with people, like in relationships, when you're dating, things like that. That can also distort things too. So if things are true, it may not be true because of the trauma. So just want to give anyone opportunity to come off the mic and just share, if they like, on how has trauma affected you in your life. So we can talk on that. Does anyone want to share? You can come off of mute and if you raise your hand. And if not, we can, as you're still thinking about that, a couple other areas too, as you're thinking about how it may have affected you. That we have one. I heard a pop. Yeah, Aaliyah. How are
Okay,
you?
cool. Good, and how about you?
Good.
Cool. So for me, it definitely took me a while to kind of realize what I went through for sure. So like that reflection part of it kind of set in later. But for me, what I like the behavior that I do now is like negative self-talk without realizing it because it's what I heard. And so like reworking that process, that thought process, has been a challenge, but trying to catch it in the moment is what's been working the best for me.
That's great. And I think something you're doing too, is in the video they talked about it. One of the things you're practicing is called thought stopping, and that's part of cognitive behavioral therapy. One of the therapies that you're talking about. So you're already doing that. So that's awesome. That's a great thing to do. Is as you're thinking about negative things, one of the best things to do is try and catch yourself because that's your. She talked about neuroplasticity. That's just your brain going on a path. You have to kind of break that train track and start a new train track. So
Exactly.
thank you for coming on.
Of course.
Anybody else want to jump in? Anybody else want to pop their hand up and share? And I can also say too, as you're telling your story, that alone too is healing. So the number one way to heal trauma is to tell your story. That's one good way to work on the trauma and get over it and start to heal in a sense. So I just wanted to share that. Okay, I'm going to call on one person. How about that? How about Eric? Eric Gonzalez?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I could hear you.
Um, I'd say for me, when it comes to trauma, I'd say it made me a bit more jaded in a sense, like a bit more negative in the way I see the world. Because of what I've went through, I've kind of viewed everything kind of like in a bit more, I don't know if you could say realistic. Maybe that's my way of dealing with it. Sense like I guess things don't excite me as much as they did anymore because of what I went through. So I guess that's the way that it's affected me personally that I'm trying to get over still.
Yeah, and that's totally normal, because the trauma kind of changes, how you view something and your perception. So thanks for sharing that. And I'm glad that you also said the other part too is that you're working on how to look at it. So obviously you're seeing it as not as something that's you want to continue doing, right? You want to change it. So that's great that you decided to say, hey, let me catch this. Javia, I think Javia had her hand up.
Okay. Honestly, for me, I feel like trauma's just made me more stressed and more tense. Like, even you asking the question right now, it's like I know exactly in my mind what I would say and what I would express, but it's like it just feels so triggering to like even express it to other people, even though like most of us probably have like experienced similar things or like have gone through similar things. It just feels like such a weight on like my shoulders to even like express it because it's like the world has just been so negative on like emotions and just wanting to like be sad or cry or feel how you feel. And it's like people are just so judgmental. And it's like you don't feel like you can just be yourself or just open up about like the things that you've gone through and like feel comfortable that like people are going to accept like oh, like, yeah, like, I've been through similar things or, like, no, it's just, like, no, close it off. Even, like, they say, like, for men that, like, it's a closed off emotion that, like, you're not supposed to cry, you're not supposed to feel this. Like, women feel the same way. Like, we don't feel like we're comfortable enough to let our guard down or feel feminine or feel soft. Like, in a world where everybody's judging you for every single thing that you do, it doesn't feel comfortable to let your guard down about trauma or the things that you've gone through.
Yeah, and what you're describing is something called a safe space, right? That's why a lot of times you hear about safe spaces or brave spaces, places, that you're comfortable, whether that's a women's group or other people who've been through what you've been through. So thank you for sharing that. And one thing you're doing here that's big is coming off of mute and being able to share yourself. So congratulations on, being brave and doing that. So this is a great section. Wish you had more time, but we're going to go ahead and pass it over to Andre for the next part of our segment.
Thank you for that, Christian. Um, this part of the segment, we're gonna drop the Blue Shield survey in the chat, and if you guys can go ahead, click on this, fill this out. It should be a quick survey, and just a heads up, this is directly tied to your guys' stipend that you guys get at the end of this. So go ahead, fill that out. You know, take your time. Uh, it's going to be open for the entirety of this session. So go ahead, fill that out, and we are going to jump into the next part of today's session, and I'm going to pass it over to Alexios.
Thank you so much, Andre. Yeah, everyone, please go ahead and fill out that link. But we're gonna pop in our trivia question now. So it's the same rules apply. Please post in the general chat. Don't change your answer. One response only, please. And the trivia question is, who was the first African American person appointed to the United States Supreme Court? Is it M. Clarence Thomas, H. Thurgood Marshall, Z. John Lewis, or P. Charles Hamilton Houston? Let's see. Wow, a lot of responses. Split second decisions. And then we'll have the winner in the chats here shortly. And keep voting. Keep voting. You never know. You never know. A shot is always better than no shot. So go ahead and continue putting those in the chat. And then we have a winner. Congrats, Aaliyah Ortiz. Congratulations. It was H. Thurgood Marshall. So congratulations. You're going to get additional $25 gift card on top of your initial stipend. So thanks for everyone participating. We have one more, so stay tuned. In the meantime, I'm going to pass over to Coach Crump and Dr. MT to take us into poll 2.
Yo, thanks a lot for that, Alexi, and congratulations, Aaliyah. That was dope. So yeah, let's go ahead and look at this poll. We're gonna jump into another poll now. Look at your screen. Question says, "What's one thing that you can identify that would really just help you feel safer or more supported emotionally?" So take a second, look over the answers, click the link, look over the answers. First question says having someone who listens without judgment. Second, learning real tools to cope and heal. Third, being able to talk about trauma without stigma. Fourth, creating more boundaries with people who drain me. Or lastly, knowing I'm not the only one who feels this way. Now, looking at some of the responses that I'm looking at right now, it's starting to move around a little bit to where I can see there's a lot of folks who have said that creating more boundaries with people who drain me. and with a second of being able to talk about trauma without stigma. And that was something that someone previously talked about earlier, where they said they don't feel in a world where there's so many people that are judging you, they don't feel like they're able to talk about it and show up for themselves. And I'd love to ask you, Dr. Rimke, as we're looking at some of the results of this poll, now we're seeing being able to talk about trauma without stigma. This is a common theme. So can you maybe talk to us about what's happening in this moment?
Yes. So this is, as you said, this is very common. We're in the 21st century, and yet mental health is still so much stigmatized. And I was talking about this in the chat a bit earlier, and Alia Palmer also said this. Like, society rewards those who bottle up their emotions. That is not something that is to be celebrated. We have to talk about everything that's bothering us. Shame is one of the strongest activators of threat. So when we're not speaking openly, our brain doesn't know how to process all of the things that it's feeling. So if you don't feel comfortable sharing the full story, share whatever you can. Talk about whatever you want to talk about. Just talk about it with someone safe and see what you want to talk about and see if that helps you. Whatever you want, just express yourself. And I think expressing yourself is the only way we can get over this stigma. Keep expressing yourself. Doesn't matter what people say. Keep doing it and then keep doing it tomorrow, keep doing it the day after. And that's how we win over stigma.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you for that, Dr. Rimke. And also, I'd love to, if one of the, attendees can really just kind of talk to me about, why you voted the way you voted. I see Aaliyah is in the chat saying, say it, almost as if I can hear them clapping virtually. Aaliyah, do you want to come off of mute and just talk to me about what you're feeling right now?
Sure. I feel like I'm talking so much this time around, so I
It's all good.
Um, yeah, everything that you were saying, Dr. Rimke, I was like, yes, that's so true. And I just feel like that, with how our society is set up and also like the busy, fast pacedness of it all, there's kind of not the time to slow down because it's so hustle culture based. So that's part of it. But also I think that like, um, just kind of going into gender a little bit, like, our last speaker, I apologize, I didn't catch her name, but, you were talking about a little bit how, like, we're kind of taught or told to hide our emotions and kinda just suck it up and keep going. I think that that is such a big problem, and that should not be the standard, and yeah, that's just my thoughts on it.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. I mean, I appreciate the feedback. I do want to call on one more person just real quick. Eric Gonzalez, let's get you back in here on the mic again, just to have you chime in. How did you vote in this poll and why?
For me, I voted the knowing that I'm not the only one that feels this way. Because I feel like having a collective, like knowing someone who's been through the same thing or been through a similar thing as you, or it could be completely different, but you both have the trauma to share, knowing that it kind of gives you a bit of relief, like I'm not so different. It's like, yeah, what I went through was terrible, or what I went through wasn't really all that great, but there's other people who are also suffering the same way I have. And it kind of builds a little bit of comfort where you're like, I can share this with other people, or you know, I'm not alone in feeling this way. I'm not alone in feeling hurt. So I feel like that brings some comfort, in a way.
Yeah, no, thanks a lot for that. I appreciate both of you all for coming off of mute and just sharing your feelings and your thoughts, and that's what it's all about. So I don't want to take up more of the time, but I'm gonna pass it over to Tex to take us to the next portion of our conversation tonight.
Thank you so much. And thank you to all the participants for coming off mic and sharing your story. Before we move into the next video, I want to take a moment to ground us. What you're about to watch, looks closely at how trauma shows up for students in high school and college. And some of the themes may feel familiar or personal. So if anything comes up for you, know that support is available and you're always welcome to pause, step away, or just listen. And as you watch, I invite you to think about how trauma affects focus, motivation, relationships, and the sense of safety students carry with them into the classroom. And then after that, we'll move into a reflection activity, Google Doc Jam. So let's roll the video.
According to the National Center for PTSD, they estimate that approximately 15 to 43% of girls and 14 to 43% of boys have experienced at least one traumatic event, which means a lot of people have experienced traumatic events. Let's go ahead and move on to our next slide. So when we look at the trauma, and we know that these forms of trauma can impair a student's ability to concentrate, retain information, hinder their ability, all these different things can have an emotional toll. It is especially true for our LGBTQ plus youth who also experience trauma due to discrimination, bullying, and rejection. Now, when it comes to behavioral changes, we see that trauma in young folks can show up in many different ways. This includes anger, irritability, even having conflicts with authoritative figures, or even engaging in self-destructive behaviors. By a show of hands, let me ask folks that are here in this space with me right now, have any of you seen these types of behaviors from some of your peers at school? Yeah, not far-fetched. Let's go ahead and move on to our next slide. So, Christian, I'd love for you to jump back in here, what maybe some of the emotional and physical symptoms of untreated trauma might look like.
First we have to understand how the brain is wired, right? So our brains are wired for connection, right? But trauma kind of rewires them for protection. So I'll say that again. So our brains are initially wired for connection, socializing, relationships, love, connection, right? But then trauma kind of rewires our brain. So it teaches your brain to go into protection mode, cut people off, isolation, stay away, avoid, So with that being said, what are some symptoms that come up from that? Well, first of all, there's emotional. So the isolation, not being around your friends, not wanting to hang out. And here's the number one thing: not finding pleasure in the things you used to enjoy. So that's the number one thing. If you ever wonder, like, man, am I experiencing any type of trauma? That's one thing to look at. If you love playing basketball, whatever, and hang out with your friends, and all of a sudden you're not doing it? That's another way that you want to kind of consider. So and then the other part is this: when that brain is rewired, it's triggering emotional responses that you can't control. So sometimes people are really quick to like fire off and be mad, or they go from 0 to 100 super quick. You're like, whoa, what happened? Well, that's because the brain is rewired for protection, and it's not rewired for connection and love, and letting people know that it's okay. So just remember that. So when you see people who grew up in like grew up in the hood, or grew up in a rough neighborhood, every time like a car comes by, they're looking over your shoulder, or they're watching everyone that comes through the door of the restaurant, or they have to sit with their back to the wall when they go somewhere. Their brains have been rewired for protection.
Wow, that's so true. Yeah, so true. Thank you so much, Christian. Let's go ahead and go on to our next slide. I definitely want to touch on this because I feel it's crucially important for us as well as our young folks to be able to heal from the trauma. I'd like to ask, let's go with you, Michael. What may prevent a young person from seeking the help that they may need when it comes to addressing and healing from the trauma they faced?
Yeah, I'd say for young people in particular, it's got to be embarrassment, embarrassment, or maybe a lack of even knowing that they're going through something, because as a young person, you really don't spend that time that you need to really sit and just feel and, go through your thoughts and just put feelings to paper in a sense. So I feel like that's a big part of it, of not really knowing what's going on with yourself, not knowing if you're going through trauma, if you're going through a harsh experience that's having an effect on you.
Yeah, no, thanks a lot for that insight, Michael. Let's go ahead and move on to our next slide. So, you kind of touched on this, talking about having the support, that environment. Michael, can you give me an idea of what a supportive environment might look like?
Yeah, I feel like a supportive environment is just somewhere where you feel comfortable speaking and being truthful. Being around people who you feel like you can be yourself with. For example, like Brother Be Well, the summer program where we had a group of young men together who had shared experiences and just felt comfortable explaining, certain traumas or certain things they were going through. So I feel like when you can find yourself a little group or just even a specific person to where you feel there's that connection where you can truly be your true self, that's when you can have those real conversations and, that those real great support systems.
Awesome. Wonderful. And let's go ahead and go on to our next slide. So clearly seeking professional help is something that, can be beneficial. Christian, what are some strategies or tips for our young folks to get them the help that they may need?
Well, I think the first thing to mention, what everyone was talking about is culture, right? So trauma affects us differently, people of color, right? Black and brown folks. It affects us differently than it would impact, someone who's not maybe a person of color. That's because of the historical, how historically how trauma has impacted us through our epigenetics. Epigenetics means outside of a gene. EPI, outside genetic gene. So that means it's not part of your gene, but it really sure and heck has an influence on your gene. For example, if someone back in the 1800s in slavery was constantly running from slave owners, things that sense, by behavior, it's going to pass down through the trait of that fear. So it's epigenetics. So that's the first thing: understanding your culture, understanding where the trauma lies, so you can get assistance in that area. Second part is looking for a culturally competent person to help you. So someone who understands that historical part of your history, and that's not just race, but that's identity too. So LGBTQ groups or affinity groups. So trans groups. You want to hone in onto the areas of belonging. I heard people say that too. A place where I can feel wanted. And the next part, you want to go in there and advocating for yourself. So knowing where your traumas lie, not understanding fully, but knowing that there are some there, and you want to work with someone who has experience in that area. So if say if it was family trauma, you want someone who has family experience and trauma in that area. And we talked about this before. EMDR, it's eye movement desensitization. And reprocessing. So it's a type of therapy to help people who experience trauma in a significant way. And those are just a few ways to kind of really look and see where would you start at in terms of seeking help.
Awesome. And let's go ahead and go to our next slide. Now, self-care is important. There's mindfulness, there's meditation, breathing. If you can maybe just give me one self-care strategy that you personally use. And I'll start off with you, Keyshawn.
For me, I think this is journaling actually, is being able to put my thoughts down onto a page and get them swirling outside of my head. And you can read them back to yourself and you could start to see, okay, how was I feeling when I wrote this? If someone else said this to me, would I just say, that's not really that big of a deal, in a supportive way? And so it allows me to put my thoughts down on a page and sort of process them a little bit better.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. And let's go with you, meant to be.
Yoga has become my new favorite. It has taught me to breathe. When you breathe, you're able to experience and feel everything and every part of what you're feeling. So by learning how to breathe, I'm able to say, hey, I'm not feeling the best today. I know why, and let me breathe to find out why. So yoga is really relaxing and it's actually really exercise. It's really energetic too. So you're able to like kind of get that exercise and that, that mindfulness at the same time.
I love that video. There are many ways for us to kind of go through and process our trauma. And mentioned during this video, we have yoga, we have mindfulness, we have journaling, and we have an exercise for you to do right now. So in the Google Doc Jam, we would love for you to start thinking about this prompt and jot down. Imagine if you're carrying a backpack that represents the emotional load you have to carry over the years, big or small. What's inside of it, and what have you packed away that no one sees? And if any of the participants want to hop on and share, you can just go ahead and raise your hand and we will call on you. We would love to hear from you. In the meantime, though, I would love to circle back to Ariana Angel. You share that, the way that you kind of deal with trauma is you shut down emotionally because it feels safe. I would love to, if you're comfortable, I would love to hear about the emotional baggage that you are carrying on your backpack. If you can go ahead and raise your hand, our producer will unmute you. Do you want to share about your backpack, Ariana? What are you carrying that you feel so that you have to shut down?
I think it's just past experiences of like reasons why I shut down. Like mainly not being heard is why I shut down. It's just better just to be quiet than to waste my breath. Um, and sometimes I just don't want to deal with it. So it's better just to save my energy than waste it.
Yeah, no, I totally hear you. When you feel like it's hard as it is to try to come up with something to share, right? To talk to other people about how you're feeling, and that take a lot of courage already. And to do that and not be able to being heard or understood, it's very damaging. And I can see why you would prefer to shut down because, a lot of people do that. Christian, what do you think is a strategy to kind of mitigate that situation when it does come up?
Yeah, I think one way is kind of what we're doing right here is, and you can probably think about as you're typing, the folks out there treating it just to write it down and get it out your head, you know? So it goes out of your backpack onto a piece of paper. Let's kind of picture it that way. The things you have in your backpack, the things you just named when you came off of mute to share that, now you took it out of your backpack and into the voice of others who can hear it and relate to you. So just kind of see it as exchange of energy, exchange of information, exchange of an emotion, right? So if it's in my backpack is heavy. How can I get this out? Oh, I can write it down. I could sing it out. I can run it out. I can scream it out. I can punch into a pillow out. I can scream into a pillow out. There's so many ways, physically and also emotionally to do it, and also thought wise too. Hey, saying I know naming is really really important. As you name it, okay, I am sad right now. I notice that I'm, sleepy or things like that. So really naming it and being able to do something about it in no space is really helpful.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Christian. And Ariana, even though it's hurt to not be hurt sometime, the truth will set you free. So keep sharing. And at this time, we're gonna pass it on to Andre to lead us to the next session.
Thank you for that, Patrick. We are going to jump into our final trivia of the night. Just some quick reminders. Make sure your guys' answers in the chat are directed to everyone, not just hosts and panelists. And make sure the question is dropped before you guys just start sending answers in and actually read it. The answers are not just A, B, C, and D. They are random letters. So make sure you guys have all of those keys. And our last trivia question of the night is going to be, which African American artist became the first non-classical, non-jazz musician to win the Pulitzer Prize for Music in 2018? There's F, J. Cole, P, Jay-Z, R, Kendrick Lamar, and S, Kanye West. So, those are all great artists. Neither or none of them, as you guys can tell, are classical or jazz. So go ahead, drop your answers. We'll have a winner here shortly. But before we get that, I just wanted to say I'm super proud of everyone on this call. And, you guys have been super open, super vulnerable. So keep that up and really continue this throughout your guys' everyday lives and take what you learn here and apply it to the outside world. And with that being said, congrats, Aaliyah Ortiz. The correct answer was indeed R, Kendrick Lamar. So, you'll get that extra $25 gift card on top of your stipend. And with that being said, I'm going to pass it over to Dr. MT for a short grounding exercise.
Thank you so much. We talked about a lot of heavy stuff today. So before we close tonight, I want to do a grounding exercise with you. So all of us can just give our brain and our body a moment to settle. So if it feels comfortable with you, you can do this exercise with me, or you can learn how to do it now and do it later. So place both of your feet on the floor. If you can, feel the floor. And now take your hands and hug yourself like this. Just gentle hugging yourself. Now take a long inhale through your nose. 1, 2, 3. Hold. 1, 2. And now exhale through your mouth. 1, 2, 3. Inhale for 1, 2, 3. Hold. 1, 2. And exhale for 1, 2, and 3. Now think about a time in your life when you were truly happy, and think about something that you love about yourself. I love and appreciate all of you guys for joining, and let your body just float in the air as you think about all of the things you love about yourself. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Empty, for that. And I want to thank everyone for their honesty and care you brought into this space tonight, either through the chat or by using your voice to tell your story. Conversations about trauma aren't easy, and your presence does matter. So before we log off, please make sure you sign in using the form in the chat, and that form will close at 8:30 p.m. sharp, and it's required for your attendance and gift cards. So just remember, taking care of your mental health is not a weakness. It's a skill, and it's something you deserve. Our next Pod at 7 session will be understanding and managing test-related stress on Wednesday, March 4th, 2026 at 7 p.m. Pacific, same time as always. We hope you'll join us. And I just want to tell everybody, take a deep breath out. Thank you for showing up, for taking care of yourselves, and for being part of this community. And have a good night.